Did you know that the original version of Pinocchio isn't as rosy as Disney's? It's a dark journey, where every line not only lengthens the child's nose, but also gnaws away at their very soul. An old carpenter sells his only warm coat in the middle of winter to buy books for his son, and a warden boy is willing to drown at the bottom of the ocean to save his father. This isn't just a fairy tale. It's a lesson in sacrifice. Is it difficult to be human? With Pinocchio, to gain a flesh-on-blood body.
He had to navigate deadly traps, betrayal, and even death.
Are we better at preserving our humanity than a wooden puppet? Behinen.
When loneliness transforms into desire, the story unfolds in an ancient village where cobblestones gleam with the marks of time.
Their Gepetto's carpentry workshop appears as a museum of memories, with the incessant ticking of hundreds of clocks and the presence of inanimate toys. However, behind the warmth of the fireplace lies a vast emptiness in his soul.
Gepetto lives a life too quiet alongside his lazy cat Figaro and his silent goldfish Cleo.
This loneliness crystallizes into a symbolic act. He carves Pinocchio from a piece of enchanted pine wood. When the blue star symbol of hope and salvation appears in the night sky, Gepetto entrusts his most sincere wish. I wish Pinocchio were a real boy. The appearance of the blue fairy, it wasn't just about granting miracles, but about establishing a moral covenant. She gave Pinocchio life, but only physical life. The wooden boy was like a blank sheet of paper at this point, without any awareness of right and wrong, and the journey of transforming from wood into a human being was essentially the process of forming his personality and conscience. The deceptive traps and the fall of a blank sheet of paper after being given life. Pinocchio enters a world full of color, but also fraught with subtle traps. Gepetto, with his boundless love and silent sacrifice, sells his only winter coat to buy books for Pinocchio to go to school. This act is not just material care, but a symbol of hope. Education is the only path for a block of wood to become a knowledgeable human being. However, reality is harsher than what an innocent child can imagine. On his way to school, Pinocchio encounters the wicked fox-honest John and Gideon the cat. They're sweet temptations. They don't use force, but rather a glamorous prospect. They paint a shortcut to success without effort. Why be a student when you can be a star? The tragedy at Stromboli Circus. Pinocchio is blinded by the stage lights and the fake applause, but as soon as the curtain closes, he realizes he is merely a commodity, a gold mine in the eyes of the cruel circus owner. The image of Pinocchio trapped in a rusty birdcage is proof that, when you choose the easy shortcut, you often end up in captivity. In particular, the detail of his nose growing longer after lying to the blue fairy carries a profound philosophy. It reminds us that every lie is a distortion of the soul. You can hide it with words, but its consequences will clearly show on your face and in your character. His sincere repentance later helped him escape, but that is only the first lesson for a more arduous journey ahead. Pleasure Island, when indulgence turns humanity into animalism despite warnings and a bitter lesson learned at the circus. Pinocchio once again succumbs to the persistence of the fox. This time, the temptation is Pleasure Island, a false paradise promising absolute freedom without rules. Here, the story shifts to a darker and more profoundly philosophical tone. The destruction of personality. The children on the island are encouraged to smash windows, eat sweets until they vomit, and mock all authority.
This is a metaphor for how, when an individual abandons discipline and morality to pursue fleeting pleasures,
they are destroying the human part of themselves.
The tragedy of Lampwick. Lampwick, Pinocchio's new friend, represents extreme depravity.
When he mocked studying and discipline, his body began to transform. His ears grew longer, his laughter turned into the bleating of a donkey, and his hands became hooves. The curse of laziness. In mythology and fairy tales, donkeys often symbolize stupidity and slavery. The transformation of spoiled children into donkeys is a stark warning. If you live only for pleasure and are lazy, you will soon become a tool controlled and forced into servitude by others.
The moment Pinocchio saw hair grow on his ears and a donkey's tail appear was the breaking point. The fear of losing himself gave him strength.
He did not choose to resign himself to his fate like Lampwick, but decided to throw himself into the turbulent sea. The act of jumping into the ocean was not just an escape, but a baptism by salt water, washing away the dust of his depravity to rediscover his original good nature. Monstro and Rebirth. When death becomes life, when Pinocchio escapes from Happy Island and returns home, he finds no warm fire or familiar scent of wood. Instead, he finds a cold, abandoned carpentry workshop.
Gepetto, blinded by love and worry for his son, ventures into the vast ocean and is swallowed by Monstro the giant whale, known as the
Moving mountain of the sea. Pinocchio's journey to the bottom of the ocean is a metaphor for confronting inner darkness, unparalleled courage. Pinocchio no longer hesitates. He ties iron to his feet to sink to the bottom of the deep sea, straight into the mouth of the monster. This is the moment the wooden puppet completely sheds the selfishness of a child to shoulder the responsibility of a son. The reunion in the belly of the whale, inside the hell, in the heart of the ocean, amidst the wrecks of hundreds of ships, Pinocchio finds his trembling old father.
But instead of weeping, he used his wits, something he should have learned at school to create a massive fire. The smoke and dust made Monstro sneeze,
Driving them out of that natural prison. The final sacrifice, the battle at sea, was the most agonizing test. When the raft was destroyed, the exhausted Gepetto told his son to save himself, but Pinocchio refused. He swam with supernatural strength, not from wood, but from low, to pull his father to shore before he himself collapsed. Pinocchio's death at the end of the journey was a pure...
As Gepetto knelt beside the cold, lifeless body of the puppet, the magic of the blue fairy returned.
Not because of but because Pinocchio had fulfilled the three most demanding conditions: courage, truthfulness, and selflessness. The wooden shell cracked open, and a boy of flesh and blood awoke. It affirms that being human is not a privilege, but a reward for those who know how to live for others. A lesson in humanity and a heartfelt conclusion. The story of Pinocchio ends, but its echoes remain fresh for every generation. The final miracle that transformed Pinocchio into a human being is not just a happy ending, but a recognition. The story reminds us that growing up is a journey of self-improvement. Asterisk. Everyone has a time when they are an innocent Pinocchio, easily believing in glamorous shortcuts and getting lost. But mistakes don't define who you are. How you feast and correct them is what matters. Honesty may hurt you at first, like your nose growing longer, but it keeps your soul upright. And finally, family love is the most reliable compass to guide us home."
Witnessing the moment, Gepetto embraced the flesh and blood boy in his arms. Surely each of us felt a strange warmth.
It's a belief in the power of repentance and forgiveness, in the belief that good deeds are rewarded, in the strength of remorse and compassion. Viewers aren't just watching an animated film. They're seeing a part of their own journey. They too have stumbled, lied, and strived to become better for the sake of those they love. Dear friends, Pinocchio's journey from a lifeless piece of wood to a loving art teaches us that being human is a choice, not a given. If you find this story meaningful, please leave a comment sharing your most cherished lesson. Have you ever felt like Pinocchio at any point in your life? Your support is our motivation to continue spreading positive value. Thank you for listening, and we wish you a good night's sleep and sweet dreams. See you again.